Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the owner and founder of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and today I want to talk a little bit about relationships and codependency. So, what is codependency? Codependency is basically excessive emotional or psychological reliance on a partner to the point where it becomes unhealthy and addictive. So you might feel, for example, if you're in a partnership or a relationship, like this person's the center of your universe. And you might also actually become addicted to this person in a way. And relationships can actually be highly addictive things. Why? Because when we are in relationship, falling in love, we have excessive oxytocin, the bonding neurochemical, serotonin, dopamine. We have all these neurochemicals flowing as we're falling in love. And just like anything else, our brain can become addicted to these neurochemicals, literally physiologically to some degree. But even more so, we can become very emotionally and psychologically addicted to something that's meeting multiple of our needs. So something interesting on a side note here before we dig into all of this is one of the things I find the most is actually that people who are codependent tend to have a high need for significance. And we have 6 basic human needs, and I have a whole video about this, but one of those basic human needs is significance. And I find that people who are codependent generally have in their top 3 needs quite a high need for significance, usually even top 1 or 2 needs. And they tend to derive a lot of significance through their partnership, through the romantic relationship, because that relationship makes them feel like they have meaning, they have purpose, and they matter. And they get that attention and approval. And so there's this strong desire to satisfy those needs through a relationship. And anything that is deeply meeting one or more of our needs, we have a greater likelihood of becoming addicted to in the first place. We have a greater likelihood of relying on and becoming dependent on to some degree because we are literally wired for those 6 basic human needs. And if you haven't watched the video on needs and you don't know what those needs are, they're growth, significance, love and connection, right? Which is another, of course, top 1 or 2 in there for people who are codependent. Contribution, which is actually quite high for a lot of these individuals as well. And then certainty, which is sort of like security, safety, comfort, and uncertainty, which is like variety, novelty, exploration, freedom, change. And so usually people who are quite codependent have a high need for love and connection and also have a high need for significance. Generally in there is their top 1 or 2, and they get these needs met through the relationship, okay? So here are some unhealthy patterns that come from codependency, and then we'll go into the symptoms of codependency and some strategies to move beyond codependency. So first and foremost, you might have a lot of desperation. Think of this as an addiction. Like if a relationship for you is an addiction, what happens with an addiction? Well, you develop unhealthy patterns around an addiction. You form, patterns of desperation when you're not getting your fix, right? You become moody, irritable when things are not going the way that you want them to. You can be very possessive if you're the codependent individual in the relationship, right? You're trying to keep your addiction, not let anything touch it or get near it or potentially, make you lose it or get in the way of you getting it, basically, right? You're trying to get your fix. You can be extremely envious if you're codependent. You can also have terribly poor boundaries if you're codependent. So these are some of the unhealthy patterns that basically emerge from a codependent relationship. And what are some of the symptoms that I see? Well, number one of the first symptoms that I see that's sort of unrecognized is, and you can really tap into this because this is a really strong symptom. Like if this is you can already probably tell that you have a little bit of codependency patterns, if not being completely codependent altogether. So usually your thoughts revolve around this individual. Okay, so this is beyond we sometimes start dating and we get excited and we think a lot about a person. If you're past that first couple months of dating and you really know this person, it's not like you have these spurts of thinking about the person for an hour throughout the day. Literally, your thoughts are so focused on another person all day long. What do they think about me? Do I have their approval? Are we happy? Are we okay? And you tend to have this constant feeling if something is less than amazing in the relationship and perfect in the relationship, this feeling oh my gosh, the love is running out, or oh my gosh, the feelings are fading and I have to control the situation now. I have to get closer to this person. I have to spend more time with them. Everything has to be at 100% perfection all the time. And a lot of your thoughts will literally be revolving around like emotional closeness to this person, hungering for that emotional bond, wanting to spend more time together, wanting to fix anything that's less than perfect, maybe checking this person's social media consistently or constantly. Like you'll have all of these sort of thought patterns that are just revolved around this person all day long, and you'll judge their interactions, or you'll ruminate about like the one time that they spoke to somebody of the opposite sex in front of you, and you don't know what it meant, and you might investigate this in great detail. Like you'll have all these patterns that are just like they're taking away from your life and your balance of your life and your self-identity. So that's a huge one. Another one is so many of your decisions, maybe most, or the vast majority of your decisions, are much more based on what you think your partner's approval will be of the decision, as opposed to what your needs are. So basically it's like the perceived approval that you get from your partner has a greater impact on what your decisions in life are than your own individual needs. Okay, if this is you, you're probably codependent. Huge symptom. Another thing, loss of self-identity. Like some people are codependent by nature, and it's so interesting because they'll spend a lot of time alone. Like they can really take space when they're out of a relationship for like 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And then the moment they're in a relationship, those codependent patterns like reemerge. And they again like revolve their life around this individual, and they lose themselves in the process. They stop taking care of their goals, their dreams, their needs, balancing their lifestyle, maintaining like a healthy support system in their lives. And so basically like they have this loss of awareness or commitment and consistency to showing up for their own needs, desires, and goals. Okay, and this is huge. This plays a really big role in terms of like the well-being of your life. And think about this too. Like imagine that you're a person who puts all of your needs, your desires, your goals basically on hold to a certain degree for your partnership, for your relationship. The moment this person that you're in the relationship with doesn't do the same, or doesn't like do the perfect thing, or isn't the perfect partner, or they make a mistake, you're going to feel so resentful, because conflict is basically born of a perception of imbalance. So whenever we perceive that like we are imbalanced or out of balance with our partner, then these are like the grounds that breed conflict. And so if you're naturally imbalancing yourself because you have these unhealthy behavioral patterns, think about how you bring this into a relationship. Like because of Hollywood movies and because of all these messages we're fed from a really young age, we think like, oh, relationships are supposed to be me giving everything to a person and that person giving everything back to me. And that is just not true. That is an extremely unhealthy way of approaching a relationship. What it's supposed to be is definitely quite a bit of giving and receiving and exchange, but also each of us maintaining our separate identity and having some overlap in terms of the relationship, but making sure that we also are committed to ourselves equally. We're never going to be perfectly equal, but as close to equally as we are committed to the other person in the relationship. So for example, if it's, Friday night and, let's say Friday, Saturday night, and you really want to make sure that you go spend time with an old friend, or you really want to make sure that you get that workout in, and there's this competing need for like, do I spend time with my partner, or do I do this thing that is really important to me? You're valuing both of those needs equally. So maybe you try to do both in the same night and, for shorter periods of time. Maybe you say, I'll do one Friday, one Saturday. Like it's not this complete dismissal of your own needs all the time for your partner. Okay, it's a balancing act of both, and this is super important. The next thing is another symptom of codependency that I see big time, is that this person has too much power over your feelings. Okay, so I'll see a lot of people who are codependent. It's like if they feel rejected by their partner, they feel like there's a loss of approval, or they feel like there's a fight or a disconnection. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't go to work. How could I go to work today? It's so painful. Or they'll feel like, I whatever my plans were, I'm canceling them because we're in a fight. I just can't even go out. Or, this like ability, like it's almost like you put your feelings, you give the other person so much power over your feelings that it literally affects your commitments in life. And if that's something that you're going through, that's a huge sign of codependency. That's a really good signpost that, like, hey, you're putting so much of your emotion in somebody else's hands, as opposed to maintaining power over your own self and how you show up and being able to keep going through life and participating in things that matter to you, even if there's a little bit of conflict or a little bit of space in a relationship, and there's some mending that needs to be done. The next thing is, if you feel like you are getting offended 24/7, or you're getting offended if you're not together 24/7, this is a huge symptom of codependency. Like, if you feel like there's a space in the relationship and, oh my gosh, we're not together right now. And I don't mean like together as in a commitment. I mean together as in every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, during the week, day in, day out. Like, if your partner goes and does something separate from you with their friends or with their family, and if you feel abandoned or jealous or hurt or upset, that's a good sign of codependency too, because you're not supposed to feel like that. Like, again, we're supposed to have a rich balance in our life of friendships and family relationships and how we spend our time. And if this is something that you're taking personal offense to, chances are you're struggling with codependency. Another thing, any extreme fear of loss is another symptom of codependency. If you spend time ruminating or thinking about how the relationship might end, or you could lose the person, you come up with all these wild coping mechanisms to deal with these, like, sort of subjective potential fears in the future that may or may not ever happen. It's one thing to obviously not want to lose somebody you love and care about, but it's another thing to be like, helplessly ruminating about it. Another few quick things that sort of summarize all this. If you have difficulty expressing your feelings and your needs, good chance that you're struggling a little bit with codependency. If you've got poor self-trust, or you're really indecisive, chances are you've got that sort of I want what you want syndrome, where you're always sort of making decisions based on what your partner wants, and you aren't actually tuning in and feeling what you want and what you need, or maybe you've even lost touch there altogether. A good sign of codependency. So a lot of these sort of patterns and symptoms of codependency can be very destructive, not just to a relationship, but to one's sense of self. And again, keep in mind, this is actually like a bit of an addiction. Codependency is basically like an addiction to relationships. So I'm going to make a video that's all about how to reprogram codependent patterns at the subconscious level, at like the deepest roots, because I'm somebody who likes to dive way, way into the sort of deepest parts of things. But I'm going to give you a few quick tools first and foremost, okay? Just to sort of help you get started in terms of the behavioral component. So first, you want to notice if this is you. So if those are symptoms, if all of those, 9, 10, 11 symptoms I just mentioned are you, then start becoming aware of them and start updating your behavior with a healthier strategy, okay? So for example, if you feel like you have difficulty expressing yourself and you're really indecisive, okay, I obviously have a need there that's being unmet. And so, I have to update my strategies there. I have to start practicing tuning into myself and expressing myself. If you feel like you've lost your sense of identity, okay, obviously I have to update with a healthier strategy there for that symptom. So I might have to, practice doing things outside of the relationship, or even just do some like self-work and inner reflection to find out who I am again and what my needs are. If you've got like loss of awareness of your needs, your desires, your goals, start creating those things again, start, tuning back in, try to maintain that sense of identity in the relationship. So basically, step number 1 is to go through those symptoms that I've just listed that you exhibit, and develop like a healthier way that you would want to behave that's not codependent for each of those pieces, okay? The next thing, look for your needs for significance and love and connection beyond just the relationship. It actually becomes quite unhealthy if we only have one strategy for each of our basic human needs that we're getting met, because we become addicted to that thing. So for example, if romantic relationships are the only way that you are getting your needs for love and connection and significance met, or if it's 95% of where you're getting those two needs met, look for how else can I get these needs met outside of the relationship? Can I find, my purpose in work that I'm doing? Can I, give back to people and do things that bring more meaning to my life? Can I find love and connection with other friendships and family relationships again? Can I make sure that I'm, keeping connected there? Because again, one of another symptom that I didn't mention is that if you're codependent, you'll tend to cut off friends and family or just sort of stop talking to them because you're so hyper-focused on your relationship. So those other relationships can kind of fall away. Another thing, force yourself to just do things in general outside of the relationship. That's another really good tool. Like, just make a commitment. And don't think of it as this like loss of time with your partner, because you probably will if you're codependent. Think of it as something that's actually creating and producing a lot more long-term health and potential for longevity of the relationship, okay? Potential for it to work and last. Because otherwise you can sort of get sick of each other or bored of each other or resentful or feel trapped because you're always spending all this time together, and there's all these other core wounds depending on your attachment style that can come about. Next, set your goals and track them, okay? You have to keep in mind, like, who am I outside of this relationship? And you can start with who was I before if you're feeling lost, or who do I want to become is a really great thing too, because we don't really find ourselves so much. We're always like kind of creating our lives and our identity based on our needs in the current moment, based on our desires and our feelings. So tune into that stuff and set some goals and track them. Don't just set them and write them on paper and forget about them and then go back to being addicted to your partner. Like, put those things on paper and, plan some action steps and strategies so that you're staying on board with keeping your sense of self. Next, you can put a list of what you think your boundaries should be in the relationship. Like, where do I have unhealthy boundaries and how can I update them to make them healthier? So for example, if you are always going above and beyond and like maybe driving your partner to work, picking them up, doing all the cooking, cleaning, taking care of the kids, taking care of the animals, working full time, if your whole life is like about meeting this other person's needs, a boundary might be that you express yourself and ask for an exchange of energy or a sharing of duties, okay? And last thing is I will create a set of reprogramming rituals, okay? So some deep strategies to reprogram the subconscious mind away from codependency. And I'm going to put that in a separate video because I'll explain in detail how that all works and go through tools from there. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this helped you identify if you are codependent or not. And if there are just strategies that you want to update and solutions that you want to focus on if you have some of the symptoms of codependency. Thank you so much for watching. And if you're receiving a lot of value out of these videos, please like them, share them, subscribe to our channel, stay connected, and feel free to visit www.personaldevelopmentschool.com or email me if you have any personal questions. Thank you.